Welcome to our Fireside chat, or rather our seaside chat here. My name is Zora Senat. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at Verisk Marketing Solutions. We are a consumer insights and identity provider to the ad ecosystem. We work with brands primarily in the financial services and insurance category by way of our parent, Verisk Analytics, which is an insurance analytics business that acquired us about 5 years ago, or sorry, 2 years ago, as a beachhead into the insurance marketing ecosystem and now the broader marketing ecosystem, which is really exciting. So NBCU is a partner with one of the most valuable, diverse audiences around. And I'm pleased to be joined here with Karen Kovacs. Karen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but thank you for joining me here.
No, I'm so happy to be here. It's always nice to work with a partner in another setting like this. So Karen Kovacs, I'm the president of sort of the client partnerships team at NBCU. We have a client direct team, and we really focus on brand partnerships and strategic initiatives, both sort of traversing the transactional relationship all the way through sort of a more strategic enterprise relationship with Comcast, NBCUniversal. And it's really been fun to work at a big brand like NBCU, where we have relationships with big customers, but now we're really focusing on extending that to small businesses. So whether it's taking them through the journey of self-service, all the way through sort of more that white glove experience. You know, our team and really the division's focus is on helping advertising and the marketers achieve greater effectiveness and achieve their results. So it's a mission, and we've got our eyes set on it.
Yeah, so NBCU has really democratized its audience. I love that you mentioned smaller businesses. You've also developed an accelerated first-party audience capability to expand advertiser effectiveness and maximize the efficacy of ad spend throughout the funnel, not just at these big tentpole events, which is what we're here to talk about today, the power of live, but all of the content that precedes and follows those unique experiences. So before we get into the power of live, Karen, if I could just dig a little bit deeper, you are president of client partnerships. Tell me a little bit about, like, what do you do, and like, what are you most responsible for at NBCU?
Well, again, I think achieving that mission, which is helping marketers make their advertising more effective. And I'll give you an example, since we're both, partners in data, and we've really invested over the past 5 years in our data platform, in our audience platform, where we've really migrated so much of an audience that lived across the Comcast NBCUniversal ecosystem, and we have built an audience graph now. We have over 200 million adults 18 plus. We have over 90 million households, and we're really now able to seamlessly move from, like, in a world where we used to transact on age and gender, now we're really listening to our customers, and we're transacting on strategic audiences. So we have over 50% of our linear and digital transactions moving in that direction, and we're only going to see more about that. So I think really getting closer to the customer and really being able to deliver more focused results for them is something that our team is really focused on.
So when we met yesterday, you mentioned that you'd spent, I think you said 26 years at Time Inc., right?
I did.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And you also said that you have overcoming the challenge of transitioning from offline into digital.
Yeah.
So how was that journey been?
Well, for one thing, I'll say I was spending 26 years at Time Inc. was a privilege, because it was a brand that was sort of steeped in journalism. I really learned about the relationships consumers had with brands. I also met David Gensler. So all in all, it was a really great experience. But it was really transferable to NBCUniversal. They also are a house of deeply connected brands, and whether that's E and Bravo Sunday Night Football, right? Or the IP that's created in our theatrical division, right? We have Wicked coming up, and that'll sort of permeate throughout. I learned a lot about that from Time Inc. But the transition over to NBC Universal has been the steep and intense study of how we deliver strategic audiences. And it's really the combination of delivering a focused approach to audiences that matter to our customers in a content environment that consumers are deeply engaged in. So like to me, that's what I could take and really supercharge at NBC Universal.
Yeah, super transferable, I
Yep.
agree. So we're here to talk about the power of live. In 2023, the majority of the top 100 most watched telecasts, I am picking straight from the article that you published last week in Brand Innovators. The majority of the top 100 telecasts were live events.
Yep.
So we've heard a lot this week about the power of live here at Cannes. I caught some of your programming yesterday.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about that and why live content seems to be experiencing this resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I hope you are all feeling it, but consumers are just heavily invested now in live content, and we're seeing that across the board. We're seeing that, you said, in not just the most watched television, even for NBCU. We like to think we're a leader in live. 45 million adults tune in to NBC Linear into live content every day. So really understanding what brings them in and what we're doing to keep them there is super important. Again, why I think they're there, it's about cultural currency. It's about the cultural relevancy of being able to speak to every topic and being right on the cusp of what people are talking about. So I do think there's a sense of that, and there's a sense of how we at NBC think about how do we super serve that consumer better. So I'll give you a good example. We have the Olympics coming up. It will be one of the biggest live moments, right, in the world. And how do we continue to super serve a customer? There will be 5,000 hours of Olympic content. How do we make sure that when consumers are watching, they're not paralyzed, right? They can decide where to tune in and how to tune in. And the more we make it easy for them, the more they'll come back. So we're launching a product called Peacock Discovery Multiview. So you're sitting back and you're watching the Olympics. At any given time, there could be 40 events happening at the same time. So what Multiview does is make it easy for the consumer. It will be broken up into 4 quadrants, so your screen will be able to display 4 concurrent live events at the same time. Really exciting, makes it easier for the consumer to say, wait, let me ease into it. Let me decide where I'm gonna go to next. And Peacock is sort of the curator of that experience. So in response to seeing how consumers are so engaged with live content, I think brands like NBC need to apply that level of technology to almost make it easier for them to navigate and to really be surprised, delighted, and engaged into that live environment.
Yeah, well, the complexity is enormous, right?
Yeah.
So when you're working with a brand, how are you taking like a format like that or other formats that you've developed, and how are brands capitalizing on that in a way that they're actually connecting with that person based on what they want to consume in that live moment?
Well, there's a couple of ways that we've really, modified our approach, really expanded our approach. The first is, I think we're going to talk about Olympics, we're going to talk about sports, but marketers really want to know more about where are the live experiences that are really resonating with consumers. And maybe surprisingly, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It is a staple in our holiday programming, and it is also, this past year, was the most watched cross-platform parade ever. So if you've watched the parade, you know there's a lot of ways for brands to come to life in the parade. So we know we have a big audience, we have a really interesting creative environment and a way for brands to stand out, and we've seen that it works. Because consumers are so engaged, the creativity of brands, that we've seen our search results increase by 6 times for brands that were activating in the parade versus just competitive programming at the same time. We've also seen brand memorability improve by 2 times. So here we have this great programming, ways for brand to activate right before the holiday shopping season. So brands are looking for opportunities like that, and to me, that's a perfect example of something that really works and really stands out. I'll give you another example, though, too, because maybe that feels like a big brand moment. We've tried to democratize how we can bring live, and particularly live sports, to life for marketers of all sizes. So this year, and actually starting last year, we've enabled programmatic buying through live sports, which has really been incredibly effective for us. We saw an 87% increase in the number of advertisers participating in our live sports content, which is terrific. And this year, we are enabling programmatic within the Olympics. And we know it works. Even just programmatically, we've seen live sports deliver. We've been working with Walmart and for advertisers buying through the DSP. We have seen the activations and response to those ads really pop. So we've seen an increase in transaction size and an increase in purchase based on just coming through the Walmart DSP. So again, like thinking very differently and democratizing it, but also making a big moment in those big tentpoles across the board.
Yeah, I, as a data identity provider, prepping for a panel about live TV and branding, I felt a little bit like on the outside looking in, but the more I thought about it and researched it, like branding is, and actually the CMO of Ally put this really wonderfully on a podcast I listened to recently. Branding creates annuities for your business and drives performance. There was a woman who was sitting over here talking about how branding can drive down CPLs, CPAs. So really, like you're creating this, not just in this moment, this incredible activation, but you're also creating annuities that are going to pay off over time for your brand. So that's really cool. Could you give any specifics? Like what brands, in your view, are doing it particularly well? What marketing campaigns have stuck with you over time?
I really think, I'll say State Farm to me is a best-in-class partner. And I'll use an example. Like we were thinking of some of the best practices, right? Like what makes that live environment work, and how do we sort of supercharge that live environment? And part of it is here some basic principles, right? You have a leaned-in audience. Well, then you almost want to give them an action. You want to make it shoppable. You want to make it interactive. But what makes someone like State Farm's work stand out? Really 2 things, and you hit on it. How are they thinking about the messaging pre, during, and post, right? And how are they using technology to better tell the story? So you've heard from State Farm, they are leaders in sports marketing. And impressively, they have been associated with the WNBA, I think they said for 20 years. I was listening to a few of them speak this week. And of course, signed Caitlin Clark long before she was a massive household name, incorporated her into their ad campaign. So they were sort of building equity into her and into what she stood for. Now, lo and behold, come to the spring. They had built all this equity, and at NBCUniversal, we call one of these moments a combustible moment. I think State Farm calls it an electric moment, because we had an opportunity to create one of those combustible moments when Caitlin was having the run-up for her to achieve and surpass the NCAA scoring title. Luckily, the game was on Peacock. So we had a little time to think about how do we lean into the power of live? How do we lean into really thinking about how do we engage this live audience and make that State Farm ownership and relationship with her really stand out? So we knew when the game was, and we did a few things. Certainly, we had custom content. We had custom ad units. You definitely need a scoreboard, right? Because you're obviously tallying and watching her ring up the buckets. But the thing that really capitalized on her leaning into live our State Farm leading into live, is something that we did. And again, it's technology like the multi-view. It was a split screen. So 50% of your screen was focused on the game, as if you were watching the game anytime. But the other 50% was 100% on Caitlin. Now, if you were at the game, you might have just been watching Caitlin anyway. But the idea that we could add a technological advancement and enhance your live viewing experience and really focus on Caitlin to see her, like, that's part of what's fun being there, seeing the expressions, right? Getting and feeling the moment. That split screen focus just on Caitlin. And so State Farm really tapped into the power of what live really can be beyond just having a presence there. And it was really that building up of the equity and then creating that moment that made it, to me, best in class. Yeah.
So NBCUniversal, as we all know, is gearing up for an enormous slate of live content. I have to read this off. So Paris Olympics, followed by the NFL season, a presidential election, your annual slate of holiday program. We talked about the Macy's Day Parade. What are you most excited about, and what are you hearing from brands about all of these different, very different opportunities to connect with consumers?
It's really exciting to work for a company that, like, we're talking about the Power Live as a moment. You'll see us here show up, but we really do believe in it, and we haven't invested in these tentpoles across sports, entertainment, and news that we think really will make us deliver for marketers, but also really create engaging opportunities for consumers. What I'm most excited about right now, after the Olympics, because the Olympics sort of stands on its own, will be Saturday Night Live. Now, I don't know if there are viewers out there. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary. If you missed the Beavis and Butthead, Mikey Day and Ryan Gosling skit, it was amazing.
It was amazing.
And it was the perfect example of how there's a 50-year-old brand that has figured out how to reinvent itself over the course of its lifetime. So we're celebrating the 50 years in February of 25, and it'll include everything from a special live telecast with current and past cast members, which will be incredible. We're also, if you're a fan, then you know music is such a part of the SNL story. So we'll also do a sort of a musical performance, and that will be at Radio City. So we're really going to continue that momentum, and of course it gives opportunities to bring some of our marketers along the way. But I think in only a way that SNL would sort of give us permission to do. So we're really excited about that. But there's more.
Oh, there's more?
Well, there's more. Because as we think about, when our relationship with the Olympics is longstanding.
Yeah.
So when we think about going into 25 and that first half is SNL, any Bravo fans out there, BravoCon is coming back. We'll be in Vegas in the end of 25 in November. And then we loop into 26. We've got an incredible slate. We've got the Milan Olympics, we've got the Super Bowl, and then we have World Cup on Telemundo. So again, enormous slate of opportunities, not only just to say, okay, as I said, we've got to keep those consumers engaged, but we've also got enormous opportunity to bring marketers into what we think will be the cultural conversation over the next 2 years.
So we are here in Cannes. This is my first Cannes, by the way. We have any other first-timers? Woo! First-timers Club? Congratulations, we made it. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? I'm not seeing and hearing a lot of things because I'm traipsing up and down the Quasset here, but what are you seeing and hearing at these events that's caught your attention and that you want to share with the audience here?
Third time at Cannes. I still haven't, a little overscheduled, and by this point in the week, the breakfasts are canceling, right? The tip, noted for next year, don't have the breakfast on Wednesday, Thursday. That's just not a good move. But what I'm seeing, and I guess not as much as a surprise, but it's really more of a delight. I'm a sports fan. And I think the attention and the excitement behind women in sports is super interesting. I've seen the topic pop up in, sure, I would expect it to be at the female quotient, but I've seen, and I celebrate that, right?
Yeah.
But I've seen it pop up in conversations directly with clients, but also in conversations across the board. And I think there is there's some momentum people are feeling. Sure, I think Caitlin was, sort of magic in a bottle. It was a fantastic moment, but was it a one-time thing? And I don't think so, because based on the conversations, we have a very rich creative community here. So how are we telling those stories? And I think we're going to hear more about them. But I think when we think about the Olympics, we're already focusing on that female athlete, right? So this will be the first numerically gender parity Olympics, right? Same number of male and female athletes at the Olympics, which I think is amazing. And I know NBC in primetime will actually air more than 50% of its coverage will be on those female sports. Mm-hmm. So we're sort of feeling that, yes, and it's our responsibility and to celebrate that, right? Deliver that to the consumers. But I know marketers, based on how, the conversations we're having, are really interested in being a part of what I think is a bit of a movement. Yeah.
So I want to ask you one question that came up as we were chatting yesterday, and I thought your point of view on it was really interesting, so I'm bringing it forward. On the topic of sports, I was reading one of my favorite publications, State of Screens. I don't know if you have any State of Screens fans in the room, but the NFL season specifically is going to be aired across 11 different channels, streaming services. They did the math, someone did the math, and the cost of consuming the entire NFL season for monthly cost to be about $106 per month per consumer. So how are you thinking about fragmentation, like as more channel services are trying to capture their share of this premium content?
I guess I would answer that in two ways. The first is Sunday Night Football has a home on NBC. I think it has been there it's been there for so long. There is a habit of watching. We've added Peacock now into the mix. So as far as the NFL in particular, I think I'm biased, but I think our storytelling with Mike Tirico is the best in the business, and it's really the reason why we are one of the critical partners in the NFL story week in and week out. So from a big brand standpoint, I'm excited about what we bring to consumers week in and week out. I think the other piece, the fragmentation piece, actually, as a sports fan, makes me happy. I want leagues across the board to find their audiences, to build their communities, right? So, and I don't know, Caitlin, you're going to have to keep me honest. We actually just announced on Friday that Peacock signed with a Division I women's soccer league, and it's the first time that they will have access, right, to this community. They will be airing their games on Peacock. So we can go from Sunday Night Football to this women's soccer league. And again, we have a history with soccer. We air the Premier League. So we also know we have a fan base to introduce this women's league to. So I think the more the better, right? So and it ties back into the women's sports. Right. The more coverage, the more we can build communities, big and small. It's better for the game, and it's better for the fans.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm glad you mentioned the NBCU brand, because we're talking about all these brands who are marketing, but the NBCU, by way of these relationships that you are responsible for, has really set itself apart as a place that you can go and rely on to bring you into new experiences for the very first time in a way that you can connect emotionally with what you're seeing. So I'm really excited to see it all, and it sounds like I've got a couple years worth of content from you, so thank you. So as we wrap up here, any other ideas or thoughts you want to leave the audience with? What are you doing later? What is the rest of your can going to be like?
needs a little bit more of this. A few
A
more
little bit more of
meetings.
this.
Yeah, I think, I was at another panel, and the question was like, how would you describe in one word can? This year's can, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to steal the word. I'm going to have a different sentiment. Momentum. I don't know. I feel like there's more excitement and momentum here than my past two cans. I feel the Quasset is filled with energy, and I do think I'm going to tie it back to the power of live, because I think the advertising community is leaned in, and there are real opportunities to provide impact through storytelling. That marriage of technology and content, we're just bringing it together so well, and how do I want to say this? There's just more creativity, I feel, and I'm feeling the energy here. Yeah. So whether it's in individual meetings or panel discussions or people you meet on the street, there's really, I think, a renewed excitement.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about live events.
Yeah.
You're only live once, right?
You are
Isn't that
only
what you
live
said?
once.
So thank you so much for
Yeah. No,
coming
thank you.
here and chatting with me and giving me a little
So
bit of
great
your
to
time.
see you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is great.